Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our aspects class with aspect goggles. Yes, children, we wear these goggles just so we can see. How do we see? Just like the planets. These goggles make us see things just like the planets. These are our aspects classes. And today we are going to be doing our aspects of Rahu. And what happens when Rahu aspects a certain house and Rahu special aspects, and the meaning behind these aspects is what we're going to learn today, kiddos. And as always, if you do not know where your Rahu is placed, where your other planetary placements are, so you can learn about their aspects as well and see what they're influencing, for that check out the links here. Check out my full astrological report. We're on the second page, you know exactly where planets are placed at the bottom in the box. And also check out my books, Astrology, Conjunction, and Aspects at the Speed of Light, where I cover all the planets through all the houses and what their aspect means. And so you will understand a lot more about aspects, okay? So let's get started with the Rahu aspect. So Rahu, how do we define Rahu? Oh my God, I can, just on Rahu and Ketu, I can write an entire book. And it won't be enough as to what Rahu represents. Rahu, think of Rahu as Lex Luthor. He loves Superman. He adores Superman. He's best friends with Superman. But he's always trying to overthrow Superman behind him. Behind his back, he is trying to scheme to take over Superman. So it's this weird relationship, this weird mentality Rahu has of Lex Luthor, where he's materialistic, rich like Lex Luthor, wealthy, smart, scientific, magician, cunning, criminal, the new age of technology, softwares. Rahu represents a truckload of things. Rahu represents viruses, bacteria. Rahu represents anything unusual, anything out of the ordinary, anything against the social norm of society. Like back in the days, they used to warn witches, probably astrologers too. It was considered against the normalities of society. Still is. But we don't get burned. Especially now, thank God, in the United States. But that's what Rahu is. Rahu is your obsession. Rahu represents your goals in this life. What you're here to accomplish in this life. Because the south node, the opposite, which we'll discuss later, is the past. Is what you always fall back on, is what you always rely on. It's the expertise you're bringing into this life. But this life's lesson, what you need to achieve in this life, and what you are wanting to achieve in this life, it's all Rahu. Rahu also represents politics. The Game of Thrones. Politics is all about Rahu, because politics is not a pure thing. It's not a sattvic thing. It's the most tamasic thing you have to deal with. The people you deal with on a day-to-day basis, how you get your campaign, how you have to raise $1 billion just to become a president now. It's all Rahu. But Rahu has the aspect 5th and 9th from itself. Why does Rahu has the 5th aspect and the 9th aspect? Have you ever thought about that? The reason why Rahu has the 5th and 9th aspect is because Rahu, or Jupiter, is the only planet that can control Rahu. Rahu conjunct any planet can completely ruin the significance of that planet. Can completely what can I say, mold that other planet into doing what Rahu wants it to do. It is only Jupiter that can control Rahu and Ketu. When Rahu is with Jupiter, Rahu just feels irritated because he is like putting Lex Luthor next to Superman. Lex Luthor, without his gadgets, without his thing, can't really control Superman. Superman can just knock him from here to Mars. And he won't even realize that he was knocked into Mars. So he doesn't like Jupiter. He doesn't like, the wisdom that Jupiter has. So what he did, he took the wisdom of Jupiter, the 5th and 9th house. Like how Lex Luthor, just try to understand in the last analysis, Lex Luthor taking the kryptonite to take the strength of Superman. So he uses his own kryptonite to take the aspects of Jupiter. So both Rahu and Ketu have 5th and 9th aspect. Because they are the only two planets that are controlled by or Jupiter is the only planet that can control these two entities and still holds his, the wisemanship. But why does Rahu does not have a 7th aspect? Because directly opposite to him is Ketu doing his thing. But Rahu has a very, very faint aspect. We do not call it aspect. We call it the axis. Meaning that Rahu is aspecting the 5th and 9th house, but Rahu has the access to the 7th house because it is one body. Rahu and Ketu are one body. We keep thinking these are two separate entities. They're not. They're really one body that were separated. So Rahu has the ability to telepathically link with Ketu wherever it is. And especially if you go higher up into divinal charts. Trim Samsa chart and up higher, you will see Rahu Ketu conjunction. Why are these two conjunct in certain divinal charts in Vedic astrology? They are always supposed to be 180 degrees apart. That's because when you go up in higher consciousness of astrology, these two are literally the same thing. If you actually look at it, they're both the same thing. They're both malefic. They both misguide you. They both either take you away from material things altogether or bring you all the way to the material things like in an obsessive manner. They're both doing polar opposite things, but they have that same power, that same energy flowing because it's the same thing. It's like you cutting my head off and putting my head into one place and my body into one place. If I'm still alive, I'm linked with my body. But what happens when Rahu aspects the 5th and 9th aspect? Well, 5th aspect of Rahu is an obsessive aspect. He's obsessed about those things that he aspects. He's always thinking about those things that he aspects. He wants to control the things that he aspects. Because remember, the 5th house of Jupiter is that aspect of playfulness, the childlike playfulness. It's about learning the basic education of life. It's about fun and games. But Rahu is that obsessive energy. That obsessive about those things. Then the 9th aspect of Rahu. Rahu is the kind of guy who wants to be on top of everything. He wants to be the first one there. He wants to be the first one to answer. He wants to be the first one to finish the race. He wants to be just first at everything. So when it comes to attaining the higher wisdom, because he stole Jupiter's aspect, he wants to be the first one to have his own way with the dharma in this life. His 9th aspect wants to be this great advisor and counselor on the things that he aspect. Whether he knows it or not, he wants to be like, okay, I know these things. And I want to overtake them. And Rahu kind of makes the person not obsessive with the 9th aspect. That's just the basic energy. The obsession will be there. But it's to master that 9th house things. In this life, you're here to master those things. But while you're mastering, Rahu is like, no, I know these things. So if Rahu, let's say it's in the ascendant, he aspects the 5th and 9th house. Fifth house, he wants to express himself creatively. He's obsessed about romantic relationship. He's obsessed about sports and fun and games. When it comes to ninth house, he wants to master the ninth house and create his own philosophy. He wants to create his own religion. He wants to tell people that this is what happens and this is what happened, while it may never happen. Because he's trying to become something, because he wants to be this master with the ninth aspect. He wants to achieve that Jupiterian quality. Do people know it? Of course. I mean, you got to understand, people could have aspect of Jupiter upon Rahu. Helping Rahu, okay, you want to achieve something, learn something, go learn. Anytime you see Jupiter-Rahu conjunction, a person is naturally scientific. They're like natural born scientists walking around. They're always scrutinizing things. They're always saying, why this, why becomes the question with Rahu. Rahu doesn't say, oh, I know it. I know it. Yeah, I'm the master. When Jupiter aspects or conjunct Rahu, you'll notice within yourself, why is it this way? Why does astrology works? Why does Mars has the fourth aspect? What are Mahadashas? They become curious. So here Jupiter is now controlling Rahu and feeding him the wisdom. He said, look, you're here to learn. You're here as my roommate in this life. I'm going to give you some wisdom. So Jupiter is the only one that controls Rahu. Now Saturn, other planets are conjunct Rahu. Rahu will try to take over them. Definitely takes over them. Amplifies the energies of the other planet. Rahu with Mars can make somebody like a bloodthirsting fighter. But Rahu conjunct Jupiter, where Rahu is an exploding energy, Jupiter is the expanding energy. What happens is, because Jupiter can control Rahu, the wisdom expands to places that you never thought you would go. Like you as a mathematician, you as an IT consultant, one day finally fall in love with astrology, mysticism, occult, paranormal activities, things of that nature. The intelligence, the divine intelligence, goes into a different realm. So always remember that about Rahu. But imagine just Rahu's seventh aspect being very, very light. Like he just knows he's connected to the seventh house. He knows what's going in the seventh house. But it's really the polar energy of Ketu that is taking control of the seventh aspect of Rahu. So always think of the fifth and ninth aspect, but just the seventh aspect, just think it has the axis. Doesn't really aspect, but he knows his second part of the body is there. So he can influence it somehow. This is what Rahu Ketu energy, in any axis, whether it's first and seventh axis, second, eighth axis, third, ninth axis, whatever axis, becomes the most confusing axis in the person's life. They want it, they don't want it. They're obsessed about it, they want to let it go. So this is why we all have these little dilemma within us, this turmoil within us. Should we do it, shouldn't we don't do it? Who are we? Especially in the first and seventh axis, it creates an identity crisis. Like, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? But because it looks at the fifth house of education, will show either person will attain education related to being a magician, actor, software engineer, scientist. Its ninth aspect can show post-grad education in these subjects, and will show that he is obsessed about wanting to teach other people. Wanting to be this person who, oh, I know everything. What do you want to know? I've got the Pandora box of information, baby. That's how Rahu acts. And that's how his aspect work. Okay? So I hope this has helped and given some insights into Rahu's aspect. Next week we'll see you with Ketu's aspect. And Friday we'll see you with Sun in the 6th house in the sign of Virgo for Aries ascendant. Otherwise, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.